Well, I think younger is better. Especially at night, Mia's already better than you in bed.
At night, you mean? That's definitely not okay.
Hey, don't get the wrong idea. We only started sleeping together after Mia turned 18. Sure, she's still in high school, but don't sweat the details, right? I mean, we're in love after all.
Right. I'm the one who loves Daddy. So gimme.
I've been married to my husband for 15 years, but I never imagined it would end like this. My husband was cheating. And the other woman? My own daughter. Now he wants to divorce me and marry her. Though they're not biologically related, once they became father and daughter, they can't legally marry. So instead, they're aiming for a common law marriage. Their betrayal and constant taunting pushed me past my breaking point. Fine. Do whatever you want, both of you. I calmly signed the divorce papers on the table. After signing my name, I slammed the pen on the table, stood up, and started packing my things immediately. Their words irritated me, but in the end, this divorce works out just fine for me. I crumpled up the divorce papers I'd prepared myself and tossed them into the trash before leaving the house. 3 years later, both my daughter and ex-husband came crawling back to me in tears. I kept quiet, but you two? With just one sentence from me, they both started trembling uncontrollably. It was clear they regretted everything they'd done, and that's all I needed. I'm Julie. I'm 24, working full-time and raising my 3-year-old daughter, Mia. My parents help me out sometimes, but I mainly raise her on my own, which isn't easy. It's not that my husband doesn't help with child rearing. I'm a single mom because I'm divorced. I graduated high school and got a job. I met a guy at work who was 2 years older than me, and we ended up getting married when I got pregnant at 20. But things didn't work out with him, and our marriage lasted barely over a year. He must have felt awkward working at the same place after our divorce because he quietly quit. I remember how determined I was after the divorce, telling myself I'd raise my daughter to be a good adult. But at 21, I was still so young. Reality quickly wore me down physically and mentally. That's when I met my current husband, Mark, during a time when I was emotionally vulnerable. We met through our mutual friend. I still remember our first conversation vividly.
So, Julie, you have a child? That's amazing. You're only 2 years older than me.
Oh, it's not that big of a deal. My parents helped me out a lot.
No, seriously. You seem like a strong and responsible mom. I really admire you.
With a serious look in his eyes, Mark praised various aspects of me as a mother. Since I always felt like I wasn't doing enough, his compliments made me feel a bit lighter. After that, we started dating and got married after about a year.
I'm taking Mia to the park.
Be sure to come back in time for lunch. And don't buy her any snacks just because she asks. We have lunch, after all.
I got it.
You say that, but you don't really get it, do you? I pointed my ladle at him as I warned him. He said he understood, but I knew he didn't, so I just smiled at his clueless face. My husband and daughter get along well. He takes great care of her, and she's very attached to him. Thanks to his help with parenting, my mental and physical exhaustion I had been feeling disappeared before I knew it. I truly felt that marrying him was the best decision. But then, out of nowhere, he betrayed me. After 3 years of our marriage, we were facing a serious crisis. When did your affair start?
About 6 months ago.
After Mia had fallen asleep, I made Mark sit on the living room floor and quietly yelled at him. His voice was barely audible, as he was being extra careful not to wake her, probably out of guilt. I came home from work earlier than expected and found Mark already home. He didn't notice I was back and was talking on the phone with his mistress, which is how I found out about his affair. Apparently, she's younger than him. I'm sure he was attracted to her youth, considering his wife is older. I was so angry I thought my face would explode from the heat, but I held it in until Mia went to bed. Mark, realizing how furious I was, kept apologizing profusely.
I'm really sorry. I'll break up with her right away and do whatever it takes to make things right. Please forgive me.
Mark apologized desperately. When he finally raised his head, tears welled up in his eyes like a lost child. I suddenly felt like I was being too harsh, and my anger fizzled out like air escaping a balloon. At the same time, the idea of divorce that had been floating in my mind started to fade. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Plus, our daughter had just started elementary school. How could I explain to her that her father wouldn't be living with us anymore? All right, but this is your one and only chance. Don't forget you promised to do whatever it takes.
You'll forgive me? Thank you.
Tears trickled down Mark's face when he realized I was forgiving him. In exchange for my forgiveness, I made him promise to work harder and help more with raising our daughter. People around me said I was being too soft. However, if I were to impose a harsh punishment, I would always have to think, this is because of the affair. And it would never leave my mind. Once Mark became serious again, I wanted to forgive and forget, and I believe that was the right choice. Welcome back. You're late again tonight.
I was working on some documents for my client. Oh, by the way, I'll be on a business trip in 2 weeks.
Again? You've been going on a lot of trips lately.
That just means they trust me with important work, right?
Yeah, I guess it does. My husband proudly talked about how his reputation at work was improving. He looked at me, waiting for praise, much like a child seeking approval after doing something good. If I didn't compliment him, he'd look all sad, so I smiled a little and gave him some light praise. After the affair, Mark really turned things around. Maybe it was his guilt, but he worked harder and seemed kinder to both me and Mia than before. Seeing him back to normal, I felt reassured that I hadn't been too harsh. Things settled down and 7 years passed. Mia is now a middle schooler. When a girl reaches middle school, it's common for her to start disliking her dad for no apparent reason. Fathers everywhere are suffering from unreasonable coldness from their daughters. But in our house, that scene is unlikely to happen.
Dad, let's go to the convenience store.
Let me guess. You want to buy some new sweets, right?
You know me so well.
After dinner, Mia hugged Mark from behind as he relaxed on the living room sofa, sweetly asking for a favor. She knows exactly how to get what she wants from him. Mark, weak to her requests, glanced at me as I washed the dishes. I sighed, looking at him, and went back to cleaning.
I'm just gonna take Mia to the store real quick.
He said nervously, as if asking for permission, then headed out with Mia to the convenience store. It's the same routine every time. They get along so well. But honestly, Mark spoils her too much. No matter how much I warn him, it's clear that Mia's requests are far more persuasive than my words. Lately, it feels like I've become the nagging lady of the house, constantly scolding both of them.
We're back. Here's your pudding.
Mom, mine's a different flavor, so give me a bite, okay?
Mark, back from the store, offered me some peace offerings to keep me happy. This too was a usual occurrence. I smiled as I took the pudding from him. Our home was peaceful as always. 3 more years passed, and Mia is now in high school. Mark's career seems to be going well, and he was busier than ever. Even so, his relationship with Mia was still as close as ever. But some things have changed over these 3 years. I've told you to let me know if you're not coming home for dinner.
I'm too swamped at work to send you messages like that. Anyway, I've got a business trip starting tomorrow, so can you pack my stuff for me?
Tomorrow? You really should tell me these things earlier.
All you have to do is throw some clothes in a bag. The night before is plenty of time.
He came home late, tossed his work bag on the living room floor, and threw his jacket and tie onto the sofa before heading to the bathroom. I put his things away and brought a towel and pajamas to the bathroom before he finished his shower. When I was cooking dinner,
How can I help?
if I was cleaning the living room on weekends,
I'll clean the bathroom then.
but now it feels like he treats me more like a maid than his wife. Every time I put his towel and clothes in the bathroom, I feel a growing emptiness. Still, I've tried to tell myself that this is just how things are now, that his job is so demanding. My husband is busy with work. I repeat this mantra in my head over and over, trying not to face the reality of the situation. While this is how I've been coping with my husband, the changes in our home over the past 3 years don't stop there. Mia, just because you don't have to take college entrance exams doesn't mean you should slack off. You've already got a jobs lined up, so why not start preparing for it instead of lazing around?
Oh, there she goes again. The nagging old lady strikes. You're such a control freak, it's annoying.
Lying on the couch, staring at her phone, Mia spat those words without even looking at me before heading off to her room. Just like my husband, her attitude toward me has changed as well. When she calls me an old lady so bluntly, it stings. As she left the living room, my husband, fresh out of the bath, walked in.
Mia looked upset. Did you say something unnecessary to her again?
I just gave her a little reminder.
Mia's in a sensitive phase right now, so that little thing feels a lot bigger to her. Be more mindful.
Got it. I don't think I did anything wrong. Mia calls me nagging, but knowing she feels that way, I've barely said anything to her lately. I can't even remember when the last time was, maybe weeks or even over a month ago. And yet, I'm still treated like the villain by both my daughter and my husband. I've gotten so used to being blamed that I've started to wonder if I'm truly in the wrong. But then, something happened that reassured me I wasn't. It was just a realization I didn't want to have.
You don't need to come to my graduation, Mrs. Bossy.
And while we're at the graduation ceremony, could you pack up and leave the house?
What? After finishing the dinner dishes, I was called into the living room by both Mark and Mia. They sat on the sofa while I sat on the floor across the table. And the words they threw at me were so shocking I could feel my eyes widen in disbelief. Then, to make matters worse, Mark handed me something that made my eyes widen even more.
Before you leave, sign this.
This is a divorce paper. What is going on?
Me and Dad are getting married.
What? Married? One surprise after another, my brain was about to short circuit, and I felt like smoke might start coming out of my ears. Married? What are they talking about? Are you serious about your marriage?
Of course. I'm 18 now, an adult. I've got a job lined up, and it's not strange for me to get married, right? The fact that I'm marrying my dad is what's strange. We're not biologically related, but there's a 19-year age gap. Plus, couples with age gaps of 20 years or more exist. So it's not that weird, right?
Mia, do you even understand what you're saying?
I know exactly what I'm saying. Stop treating me like a child. You're so dense, old lady. You're not needed here anymore, you know?
Not needed. What does that mean?
Back when I was younger, older women seemed dependable. But as I got older, I realized younger is better, especially at night. Mia's already better in bed than you ever were.
At night? Mark. No way. That's completely unacceptable.
Hey, calm down. We didn't sleep together until after Mia turned 18. Sure, she's still in high school, but don't worry about the details. We're in love after all.
Exactly. I love Daddy. So, get out of our way, old lady.
My husband and daughter taunted me openly, making it painfully clear they were looking down on me. Could this even be called an affair? But the woman my husband cheated with is my daughter. What on earth is going to happen to us? One thing was for sure. There was no way the three of us could continue living together peacefully. Anger, confusion, and fear swirled together inside me, and I had no idea what to do. I scratched my head in frustration. Since they were throwing around words like divorce and marriage, I figured I should at least inform them that their plan wasn't going to work. Even if you aren't related by blood, once we're divorced, the two of you can't legally marry since you're registered as father and daughter.
Oh, you didn't think we already knew that? We're not that dumb.
Trying to stop us is so pathetic, old lady.
But you're talking about getting married.
Since we can't legally register as a couple, we'll just live as husband and wife. It's called a common law marriage or domestic partnership.
Seriously, old lady, your thinking is so outdated. You act like we need the government's approval to be a couple.
Both Mark and Mia mocked me and laughed at me. At that moment, my anger reached a boiling point. I clenched my teeth and forced myself to stay calm. It's true that nowadays, many couples choose common law marriages due to financial circumstances or emotional and physical connections. Most of these couples seem to have a strong commitment and determination to stand by their choices despite outdated laws. But my husband and daughter are different. I know they lack such commitment and resolve. Fine, do whatever you like. I signed the divorce papers on the table with a smooth stroke.
Wow, the old lady signed it in a fit of rage just as we planned. Your mission accomplished.
Glad she didn't give us a hard time.
After signing, I slammed the pen down on the table and immediately began packing my things. Their taunting words irritated me, but honestly, this divorce was just as convenient for me. I crumpled up the divorce papers I had prepared and tossed them into the trash before leaving the house. 3 years have passed since my divorce from my husband. At 42, I now live with my parents. Without the chaos of raising a child or dealing with infidelity, my life has been peaceful. But that peaceful life was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Hello, who is it? What?
Julie, it's you, isn't it? You're the one who put these crazy ideas in her head, aren't you? It must have been you.
When I checked the monitor, the last face I wanted to see appeared. My ex-husband, yelling and ranting, and frankly, his face was more annoying than his voice. I could have ignored him, but causing a scene outside might disturb my neighbors. So reluctantly, I let him in.
What did you say to Mia?
As soon as he saw me, his face turned red as he shouted. But no matter how loud he got or how red his face became, I wasn't scared. I kept my calm, speaking in a measured tone to contrast his outburst. Can you at least explain what's going on? I can't say anything if I don't know the situation.
Mia said she wants to break up.
So, But you two weren't legally married, right? That's just a breakup, like any other relationship. No messy divorce paperwork, no splitting assets, nothing like what we went through.
Exactly. That's how it should be. But Mia said,
She told you she's breaking up with you because of your infidelity and is demanding alimony, didn't she?
you knew.
Realizing his worst fear had come true, my ex's face flushed red again. Watching his expression shift so rapidly was almost amusing. Seeing how much more his face could change, I couldn't resist stirring the pot a little more. Actually, about 3 months ago, Mia came to see me. She asked for my help. It had been 3 years since I'd last seen my daughter, not since my divorce. Just like Mark, she'd suddenly shown up at my door out of the blue. Long time no see. What brings you here?
I don't know what to do, and you're the only one I can talk to about this.
Mia was visibly distressed. Given how things ended between us 3 years ago, I could have easily turned her away. But I couldn't bring myself to do that. I invited her in and listened to her story. As I served her a cup of hot tea, she took a sip to calm herself before explaining what had happened.
Mark, I mean Dad, he's been cheating on me, and not just once. There are 3 other women.
3? Wow, looks like he hasn't learned his lesson.
Wait, you knew Dad cheated before?
Oh, well, I guess I never told you since you were only 6 at the time. And while I don't have solid proof, I always suspected he had affairs multiple times.
You knew about his cheating and didn't do anything?
I started suspecting him about 2 or 3 years before we divorced. He'd say he was busy with work, but I think he was just seeing other women. Around the same time, his attitude toward me became unbearable, so I began considering divorce. But Mia was set to graduate from high school and start her career in just a few years, right? That's why I decided to wait until then. So when you two handed me those divorce papers, I already had my own prepared. I was wondering how I would bring it up, but it was a relief when he mentioned it first.
Wait, I don't get it. If you suspected him of cheating, wouldn't you investigate or confront him?
If I had found any evidence, I probably wouldn't have been able to hold off until Mia graduated. I would have confronted him right away. So I didn't look for proof.
Does that really answer my question? How could you stay with someone you'd already decided to divorce?
Really? I was fine with it. There are women out there in their 30s or 40s who decide to divorce but wait until their husbands retire just to ensure a secure future. Compared to those 20 or 30 years of patience, my wait felt like nothing. Well, I see. But didn't the idea that he might have been cheating all along make you anxious? Oh, absolutely. The thought that he might have been cheating all along did cross my mind, and it was tough keeping my emotions in check then.
What made you think Dad was constantly cheating?
Well, after I forgave his first affair, he suddenly got busy with work. Looking back, it was probably just him making time to cheat. At the time, it was just a suspicion, but after hearing from you that he had 3 mistresses, it all clicked. So, he's been cheating all this time. I've heard people say cheating can become a habit. If it started when we got married, wow, that would mean 15 years of affairs. Maybe even longer if I include the time we were dating. Mia looked stunned as she listened to me. I guess no matter how much I explained, she couldn't wrap her head around the idea of living with someone for years, knowing divorce was inevitable. But if she ever has kids of her own, she might understand my feelings one day. Realizing the conversation had gone off track, I decided to bring it back to the topic of Mia and my ex-husband. So, you started suspecting him of cheating and went looking for evidence? And you found some?
Yes. When I married Dad, I was 18, right? At that time, I thought I was all grown up, but I wasn't. After turning 20 and gaining some life experience, I started noticing all sorts of suspicious behavior from him. Dad probably still thought of me as a kid and let his guard down because I found evidence quickly.
But you found the proof. But since you and Mark had a common law marriage, you weren't legally married.
Exactly. So it's just like any other breakup between a couple arguing over cheating. But even though we weren't married on paper, I still felt like Dad and I were husband and wife.
Which means if things stay as they are, he'll walk away without taking any responsibility, leaving you behind. And since he has no legal obligation in a common law marriage, he was free to keep cheating without facing the consequences. Maybe he thought that because I forgave him once, if he cried and begged, he could keep our relationship going.
What should I do now? I don't know what to do.
It seems like choosing a common law marriage was his way of preparing for a situation like this. When I pointed out my ex-husband's motives, Mia started trembling. Tears began welling up in her eyes. In a common law marriage, couples don't have the same legal protections, meaning inheritance, property rights, and even child custody can become complicated. Issues like this, involving cheating, are also more common in such relationships. Honestly, this is the result of Mia's own choices. She likely just went along with whatever her dad told her, believing that a common law marriage was as good as being a real couple. But considering her age at the time, it's hard to place all the blame on her. More than anything, the real villain here is my ex-husband, who manipulated her with sweet words.
So I was just the convenient wife who could turn a blind eye to his cheating all along.
Pretty much. A husband with a cheating habit and an 18-year-old who didn't know better. When I first heard about you two planning a common law marriage, I stayed quiet, but I knew this would happen eventually.
Why didn't you warn me?
You two were mocking me so much back then. I was too furious to say anything.
You're right. I was so wrong. I thought I was grown up at 18 and treated you terribly. I'm so sorry for everything I said and did.
Tears, which had been building up in her eyes, finally spilled over and started falling. Watching her cry, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Considering all the pain she caused me, I could have easily turned my back on her. But Mia is still my child, the one I gave birth to. Besides, she was deceived by Mark too. She was only 18, so I can't blame her entirely. And given that I was also betrayed by Mark, I'm hardly in a position to lecture her. All right, now, are you ready to do as I say?
Will you help me?
I'll give you advice, but you'll have to handle the rest on your own. I sighed softly, but a small smile appeared on my face. After going through my own divorce and watching Mia's experience with a common law marriage, I gained a good amount of knowledge on the subject. I decided to share that knowledge with her and offer my help. The key piece of advice I gave her was that even in a common law marriage, under the right conditions, she could still claim alimony for infidelity.
How can you claim alimony for infidelity when you weren't even legally married?
Yes, it's possible. There are various conditions, but in your case, although you weren't legally married, the fact that you lived together for 3 years as a couple and that you both presented yourselves to others as being in a common law marriage counts. Of course, catching a wife 19 years younger is something he probably couldn't wait to brag about to everyone, right? Well, now that your common law marriage is recognized, so is your right to claim alimony for infidelity.
That's surprising. I thought alimony for cheating was only given when a couple is legally married. If a boyfriend cheats, they don't have to pay alimony, right?
Sorry, but you're wrong. While common law marriages may not grant inheritance rights easily, you can still claim alimony for infidelity. At that, Mark dropped to his knees in the entryway. I couldn't help but smile a little. The idea of dissolving the common law marriage with Mia and paying alimony seemed to hit him hard. But knowing that he fully intended to keep cheating, it was strange that he was this shaken over just the situation with Mia. I was sure the additional blow I had instructed Mia to deliver was what was really cutting deep. How many more claims for alimony are we talking about?
2 more.
So out of the 3 mistresses, 2 are married, huh? I couldn't stop myself from laughing at the absurdity of it all. Mark, seemingly too overwhelmed to care about my reaction, sat there silently, his head hung low. Mia had already gathered all the information on his mistresses. I had told her to inform the women that there were other mistresses, exposing Mark's recklessness. Judging by his demeanor, I was sure things were turning into quite the disaster for him. Looks like Mia did exactly as I instructed.
So it was you. You're the one who put these ideas in her head.
He began trembling just like Mia had. With just a few words, I had both of them shaking in their boots. It was satisfying to see them finally regret their actions. Why did you do all this? Watching him tremble like a newborn fawn as he tried to stand, I continued speaking, barely holding back my laughter. Perhaps in desperation, he decided to spill everything.
I didn't care who it was, as long as they were young.
But Mia, why did you target her?
I never planned for it to go that way at first. When I married you, she was only 3. I thought she was cute and all. But I never imagined I'd cross that line. Though maybe part of me was already forming a plan deep down.
What plan?
When you found out about my first affair, that's when I started thinking younger was better. The younger, the more appealing. Then, Mia started getting really attached to me. And I thought, if she stays attached to me as she grows up, I could have a young woman by my side.
That's insane.
I know it sounds crazy. At first, it was just a passing thought in the back of my mind. But when Mia got to middle school and was still attached to me, that's when I started taking the idea more seriously.
So, the plan started to feel more real, and you flipped the switch, huh? Yeah, I noticed Mia never went through that "I hate dad" phase. So you ramped up your grooming game. By the time she was in high school, you took advantage of her innocence and manipulated her, right?
Yeah. I even played into the whole forbidden love angle, telling her, even though we're not biologically related, we're still father and daughter. So this love is taboo. She just ran with it.
And then the 2 of you conspired to push me out. Even if it wasn't fully conscious, you've been grooming her since she was 3. So, in a way, you've been emotionally cheating on me with Mia for 15 years. How much more do you plan to insult me? The more I listened to him, the more my head throbbed. At this point, I could piece together the rest of the story. As soon as she turned 18, he thought he could legally bypass everything. At that moment, he decided to abandon me and announced his plan to remarry my daughter. To a man obsessed with youth, an 18-year-old daughter must have seemed like the ultimate prize. But the world isn't that simple. Common law marriage doesn't serve as some magical pass to avoid responsibility for cheating. Even in a common law marriage, responsibilities must be met.
I'm sorry. I don't know what to do anymore. Mia, the other women. It's all a mess. Help me. Please tell me how to fix this.
Just like Mia, he came crying to me for help. But unlike my daughter, he wasn't my child. He was over 40 and no longer a child himself. And let's not forget, he had betrayed both me and my daughter. I had no intention of helping Mark. After all, there's no way to avoid taking responsibility once you've been caught cheating. You're just going to have to face the consequences.
Please, don't say that. At least convince Mia not to claim alimony. I'm begging you. I spent so much on those affairs. I can't afford to pay for 3 alimony settlements all at once. Help me.
We're already divorced. Your problems have nothing to do with me. I shoved him out the front door, despite his childish whining. After slamming the door shut, I couldn't help but smile again. In the end, he had to pay alimony to Mia and to the 2 husbands of his other mistresses. Having already squandered his money on his affairs, paying 3 settlements drained him completely. His reputation took a nosedive as news of his multiple affairs spread and his social circle crumbled. Ironically, some people at his workplace initially supported his relationship with Mia, believing he was pursuing a forbidden love with an 18-year-old. But after finding out about his other affairs, even those supporters turned against him. As expected, he faced relentless criticism at work. He couldn't continue and had to find a new job. It turned out that all the late nights and so-called business trips he claimed were for work had just been cover-upes for his affairs. He hadn't been improving his skills or advancing his qualifications. He hadn't even obtained any certifications, which left him at a huge disadvantage. And now, as a man in his 40s with only a high school diploma, his job prospects were slim. He had no choice but to accept a lower-paying job. It seems that now he's barely making enough to support himself. But that's fine. At least when he has no money, he won't be able to cheat. Mia, meanwhile, started living on her own and continued working. She still contacts me and occasionally visits me at my parents' house. Though it doesn't bother me, my daughter seems to feel a bit awkward around me. It looks like she's trying hard to connect with me in an effort to ease that awkwardness. I am sure she has something she wants to discuss with me about her work or life. I remember being 21, a young single mother, realizing just how unprepared I was for adulthood. I had my own share of struggles, so I can understand what she's going through. But it seems Mia's lingering guilt prevents her from opening up to me. When I see her struggling, it does tug at my heart a little. Still, the awkwardness she feels and her hesitance to ask for help are her own doing. If she has problems, she'll need to figure them out on her own. And if she ever finds herself truly stuck, I'm sure she'll come to me. When that time comes, I'll help her in any way I can. As for me, I've continued working while living with my parents. Having failed in 2 marriages, I've decided I'm not interested in getting married again. Sometimes there are things that just don't suit certain people. For me, that thing seems to be marriage. But that doesn't mean I can't find happiness without marriage. From now on, I'll be searching for my own version of happiness.